Hi everyone, welcome to the demonstration. In this session, we are going to learn about the browsers and servers especially. So how the browsers make the request and what happens on the server end and how the server responds to the requests made by the browsers. Sometimes we call the same browsers as clients as well. For example, we have a couple of interesting and couple of featured web browsers like Firefox, Chrome, Opera, Safari, etc. Based on your interest and based on your operating system, any web server is okay to connect to the internet to retrieve a data from a website. So now what we do is whenever we want to browse a website, we will be entering a URL which will be converted into a respective IP address to identify a computer on the network. And the computer which I am speaking about now is nothing but the web server, and this web server is also on the internet, and this internet the member of this internet must be identified by a unique entity, which is nothing but the IP address. So as soon as you enter the URL into the address bar of the browser, the URL will be converted into the respective IP address with some servers in between. Again, we call them as DNS servers. Okay, so now before going forward, let us consider a daily scenario where we are going to use the internet every day. So look, browsing on the internet, in my case, I'm taking this example of how I start my day after a wake up. So I want to read a newspaper online, and then whenever I want to read it, I'll be going on to the internet, and with the help of the browsers, as I discussed, like Google Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer. Okay, and then I'll be entering some URL which will take me to a particular newspaper website. Right. So for example, in this case, I have one website where I subscribe for the newsletters, and I am interested in going through some news. For example, as of now, I want to just know what is the status of corona patients in the world, and did the vaccine come out. These are all the things which I want to check on the internet. So I just went to some site and I entered the URL, and the request will be passed on to the internet because we don't know where the server is located. It can be anywhere across the globe, but I should be able to connect to that server to get the information out of that server. Because I'm a member of an internet and even the server is a member of internet, we both communicate each other on the internet using a protocol called as HTTP protocol. So with this HTTP protocol, I will be making a request on the internet, and the internet, now as I told you earlier, the IP address, which is nothing but the identity of a computer on the network. So it will be taking me and forwarding me to the right server which I am looking for. Then the server will receive this request, and then it will be trying to find out, all the resources which is being requested in the request body sent by the browser, or we can call it as a client as well. Once processing this request, the web server is responsible to generate some content in the form of its own language and send it back to the internet. And the internet again validates the IP address from which the request has been made and send the data back to the requester, the browser, client, or user. Whatever the name you give, they all represent the same. Okay. So now, for example, in the previous example, now you have information for the URL which is you are asking to the web server or your DNS server. So that will be sent to the web server, and this web server will be replying with an answer saying, we have all this stuff and whatever you requested is available with me. So how can I send it to you? So I send the request data. The web server will be processing all the data available with it, and it will be generating it will be generating some classified content like HTML. It sends us back the CSS, the JavaScript, images, videos. So these are all the things which the page contains. The page which the user or the browser requested contains, may or may not contain all these elements, and these elements I'll be sending back as a response. So now what happens is, all the resources, whatever the resources I explained previously, that's HTML. And HTML is nothing but it is a markup language used to construct the web pages as blocks, components, and different sections of a web page. So HTML is a language to build the website. It's a markup language to create some blocks in the content. And CSS will be used to style the content. For example, the height, width, positioning, and different kind of your CSS as stylings, which will be helping us to make this website keep more engaging, so that it will attract more number of users to the website. So styling is very important, and it also sends some JavaScript code, and the JavaScript code will be also run on your local computer, because the client, the server, will be sending you the JavaScript as a part of the response. So this JavaScript can be handled, will be handled by the web browser. We call it as a JavaScript console. And why we use JavaScript is to just do some client-side operations, like button clicks, handling the events, event handling, so all these things, like whatever the actions you do on the page, which you don't want to do it directly on the server. Instead of doing it directly on the server, your web page or your web browser will be able to handle this JavaScript with a default JavaScript engine present in the browser. Apart from that, you can get some images, you can get some videos, and you can get a lot of content from the internet. Okay, and finally, once we want to conclude, what we can say is, this left hand side, whatever you see, this computer is a computer which contains Google Chrome to access a server, and we call them as web browsers. They know how to display the content that is being sent by the server, because as we discussed previously, the response contains HTML, CSS, JavaScript, images, etc. And someone should be there who understands this format, and then format the whole document, prepare and generate a document, and finally render it back to the user, which will be taken care by web browsers. The same way, we do have the servers called as web servers, and their functionality is to receive the request, validate the request, do some resource exploration. For example, some database request will be there. For example, I entered into my newspaper vendor's website, and then I was asking this website for not today's newspaper, for a newspaper which was published 10 days back. So this logic will be handled by the web server, like okay, this is the date what the customer is looking for, or what the browser has looking for. So let me go to the database, fetch the data pertaining which matches this request date, and then format it, style it, apply styles with CSS, add some events, and if it includes some images or videos, just get them and attach to the document and push it back to the web browser who sent the request. So that is the main duty of a web server. So now we need to understand like how these browsers know what to display. So the browsers generally interpret HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, as I told before. These browsers, the browser is a piece of software. It is a software, and this software is again having some internal engines and tools which will be taking care of structuring your DOM. A DOM means a document object model, where all the elements of your web page will be treated as a node tree, which will be having parents, children, siblings, etc. So this was a DOM tree. In this DOM tree, the browser understands how to place the content appropriately, and you also have some instructions on the response which you have received from the server, like how to place the content. And finally, it will arrange everything as per the expectation, and then deliver back the web page to the user in a very attractive manner. This is how a web browser and a web server communicates with each other.